This is Nicole from This Built America, and we are here with Kurt Hawks from Austin, Oregon of Hartford, Connecticut. And he is going to tell us today about the company and how he got involved with organ building and the different things that go on at the plant. How are you today, Kurt?
I'm just wonderful. And how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. So, working with organs is definitely a different type of job. How did you come about to your position?
It was an accident. I went to school and got a degree in education and did my student teaching, but graduated late through a series of difficulties, and so started substitute teaching in January. And about May, the substitute teaching was about to run out, and I got a part-time job here, and that was 20 years ago. So never left.
20 years. How many employees does your company have currently?
I have about 27 currently.
Okay. And do they tend to stay for longer amounts of time, or, are they in and out, or how does that work?
Well, a combination. I mean, our longest-serving employee currently still here is Stu Skates, who started in 1960. And we have a number of employees who started in the 60s, up to people who've been here for a year. So it varies. Although traditionally Austin had a lot of people who would have called lifers, who ended up spending their entire career here.
And what are some of the different types of jobs that they do at Austin?
Oh gosh, well, in the factory there's everything from metal work, pipe making, lots of woodworking jobs from the mill to small parts, lots of arts and craftsy jobs. We sort of joke, if you're good in arts and crafts, up on the third floor making small parts, to the voicers, who are the ones who actually make the organs sound the way they sound, and who go out on the road and do the finishings to sort of sculpt the sound of the instrument to the building. So there's a wide range of sort of disciplines.
Now, if someone wanted to get involved with, working in this business, what kind of technical background would they need?
That's a good question. It sort of depends on what part of the business you want to get into. If it's in the shop as a voicer or a pipe maker, I suppose some background in music if you wanted to be a voicer, but essentially you would apprentice and train here. The job is so specific and so, I don't want to say unusual, but unusual. So you would apprentice and train here. If you wanted to be a designer, then a background in engineering is very helpful. And some of our best designers have had pretty strong backgrounds in engineering, to sort of business backgrounds if you're in the office.
Do most of the people that work for you, do they come from the area or from other places?
Most of our employees are from the area, although Austin has a long tradition of bringing people here to work when there's someone with the skill set that we need, whether that's bringing people over from England. We have some of our most famous employees, very well-known names in the industry, were brought over from England, but most of the employees are from the area.
And how long has Austin been around?
The company was founded in 1893. We've been in the present location since 1898. So I don't have to do the math in my head, but since 1893. And
who was your founder, and how did he get involved with building organs?
He's over my shoulder. It's John T. Austin. And his father was what it was called a gentleman farmer in England, which I think essentially meant that he had a farm, but he really didn't need to do a lot. He was sort of comfortable. And he sort of, as a hobby, got into building pipe organs. And so that's how John Austin was first exposed to organ building. At the age of 19 in 1889, he decided to come to the United States. And he had all sorts of ideas about organ building, and he ended up at a company called Clough and Warren out in Detroit, and fairly soon after that founded his own company.
Do you find that you guys have a lot of competition at all anymore in the States, or is most of your competition from outside of the country?
Whenever someone asks that, I always say we have too much competition. There are actually a lot of firms that do what we do. I'd say not as well, but yeah, there are some major firms in the United States and North America who we compete with regularly. Yes.
Okay. Do you know where most of your materials are sourced from, if they come from the States or from elsewhere?
Well, since that's my job, yes, the vast majority come from the United States, and we try to buy as much as we can actually within Connecticut. So lots of jobs get done at machine shops for small parts, and we try to farm all that out in the local area.
Well, that's great. That's nice to hear. I know with some companies it's difficult for them, to get the products that they need to build, what they need to build here in America. So it's always good to hear that a company is able to source locally, for sure.
Well, one of our biggest problems is outliving our suppliers. And there are certain things that the only source now is in China because the product's not made in the United States anymore. There's a few things like that.
Mhm.
And it is an enormous headache, which I've been dealing with for the last couple of weeks, when we outlive a supplier, because sometimes it can be difficult tracking down a new source.
Why do you think you guys have outlived suppliers, so to speak?
That's a good question. The company has always been very conservatively managed. It builds a very unique product. While we have lots of competition, nobody builds pipe organs like we do. We're the only ones who do what we do the way we do it, I guess. Whereas a lot of our competition, there's a lot of overlap in what they do. Austin's product is completely unique, at least mechanically. And so it's carved out a niche. We have an existing base of about 3,000 instruments out there. So there's lots of rebuilding work and work on them. So there's a significant market already there built up.
I was going to say, I know you guys, build original organs, but do you also do things, such as refurbishing, if people come to you that need things fixed and those sorts of things?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there's a lot of that goes on. And Austin for many years was known for its consoles, and over the years sold, gosh, probably thousands of consoles in addition to the organs we built, and there's Austin consoles on instruments by any number of builders.
What would you say is one of the most famous pieces, or one of the pieces that the company is proudest to have created?
Wow. Well, in its heyday, which would be like the 1920s, when they were shipping from the building in front 2 pipe organs a week, there are so many legendary instruments for legendary venues that came out of this place. It would be hard to really pick one. I mean, the Mormon Tabernacle organ at one point was in Austin. That was one of their big early jobs. Any number of enormous exposition jobs, like our Opus 500 in San Francisco, Medina. I mean, the list goes on, and it would be hard to pick one because in that period of 1900 to 1930, Austin was one of the 3 or 4 big dominant firms in the country and had lots of prestigious contracts.
Who would you say most of your customers are?
The vast majority of our customers are churches. There is some work, for schools and the occasional concert hall job, but the vast majority are churches, some synagogues, so religious.
And how long on average does it take to make an organ for one of those organizations?
It depends on how big it is, but generally somewhere around 2 years from signing the contract to completion of the job. But it does depend on the backlog at the time and how big it is.
And how long do they usually last, the owners?
Oh, well, we've got organs. Our longest serving instrument is our Opus 2, so all of the instruments get an Opus number, and Opus 2 is 1893 or 1893, a Swedish Heart of Mary in Detroit. So it's been in use since 1893. So they can last with basic maintenance a very long time.
Wow.
which is both a blessing and a curse, depending on how you want to look at it, for us.
Yeah, churches have definitely changed, and for organs that, have been around a long time, does your company have any partnership in moving these organs at all, or, do they tend to stay in the same place?
Some of them move around quite a bit. We do keep track of them. Right over there are the correspondence files for every instrument we've ever built. And so we do keep track of them. We've moved any number of them. One of the biggest parts of the business today is updating them, rebuilding them, and incorporating sort of computer technology so that the organs will record and play themselves back and are MIDI compatible and can control other instruments, and other instruments can control them. So there's a lot of that goes on.
So your models have definitely changed or evolved over the years then because of technology?
Yeah, well, certainly starting probably in the 1970s, Austin was one of the first companies to begin using any sort of solid state equipment in our control systems that run the organ and do the switching. And by the early 1990s, the direction of the business was all of the organs are computer controlled. So there's a computer in the console that reads whatever the organist is doing, encodes it, and sends it up a phone cable to computers in the organ that decode it and play the organ. And that happened by the early 90s.
Wow, that's fascinating how that works. Um, I guess, you mentioned it a little bit. Since you've been around, what have some of the, challenges been for the company?
Oh, any number of them, from outliving suppliers and having to resource materials to two significant and challenging recessions that the company had to be guided through. And this last one especially was, as close to the Great Depression as I hope to ever get myself. And Mike Fazio and Dick Taylor really worked very hard to guide us through that. Fortunately, going into the downturn, we had a significant amount of work. We typically run somewhere around 2 years behind the national economy. So when a recession begins, we're usually pretty flush with work. It's a year or so after the recession ends that we don't have anything to do.
Sometimes it's good to be behind schedule in those
Yeah.
cases then. And for as long as you've been there, what do you think has been, some of the wins for the company that you've seen?
Oh gosh, one of the really big jobs that we just did was an enormous new organ for First Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. 5 manuals, 118 ranks or sets of pipes. One of the biggest organs we've built in a decade, and that was quite a win. It took a lot of effort, not only to secure the contract, but to design it and build it and install it. But it's a phenomenal instrument, and it's something I'm really proud of that we've done in the last couple of years.
In the story, we were saying that, it takes almost like a little tiny city of people to put the organ together. Now, I know you mentioned that your company has 27 employees. How many people does it actually take to put an organ like that together?
In terms of on the road or here, or it gets set up twice. It gets built the first time in what we call the erecting room or the setup room. And in the case of Washington, D.C., it filled that room 3 times. It wouldn't all fit at once in the room. And then basically a crew of 3 people did the installation, and then the tonal finishers, 2 tonal finishers. So, the actual, once it was shipped to the church, it was anywhere between 2 and 4 people for about 8 months.
So they're really personalized pieces that the workers do create.
Yes, and people, if you had people here, and Don Austin used to be that way, you could mention the number of an organ that he had worked on, say 30 years ago, and as soon as you mentioned the number, he would say, oh, that's in such and such a church, and the organist was this fellow, and the chairman of the committee was this guy, and I remember it was arranged like this, and, so yeah, it can become very personal.
Are there, you guys really do a lot of things by hand and put a lot of care into creating the organs. Are there companies that are mass producing pipe organs out there?
I hope not. No, not that I'm aware of. It doesn't lend itself. I would say that Austin is as close to a company that is equipped to do mass production as anybody in the world. That was John Austin's whole premise when he set up his factory, and we still have all those machines and use them every day. But it's not an instrument that lends itself very easily to what you would think of as mass production.
I was just wondering because sometimes, you see people, maybe in smaller churches playing a keyboard, trying to mimic the sounds of an organ and those sorts of things, but that's a completely different type of clientele, I would think.
Well, yeah, the electronic guys do mass produce stuff, yes, but we don't do any electronic stuff, so I wouldn't know.
And what do you see, for the future of the company? As far as different items coming out or, different types of clients that you may have?
Well, that's a good question. So the market certainly has shifted over the years, and now, it's not as many new organs. It's a lot of rebuilding and moving organs and enhancing organs and changing them around, and I suspect that that's the future of the business. So fewer new organs than we built, certainly in the 20s, 2 a week, but a lot more rebuilding work, which we're already doing a lot of, but that's the direction of the business.
And how do you oh, you there?
You went away for a while. You're back.
Okay. What kind of impact do you think Austin has on Hartford and the community there?
Oh, well, it's a significant part of the history of Hartford, and we just participated a few months ago in an exposition at the Mark Twain House that they did. We lent them some of our documents and some stuff for an exhibition they did. We have a significant place in the history of Hartford, although it's always been relatively small. At our height back in the 20s, the company had about 90 employees. But you look at somebody like Pratt and Whitney, for instance, 30,000 employees at their height, or the Travelers or Aetna. We're a relatively small business, but historic. Part of the fabric of the history of Hartford and in our original location.
Now, just a fun question. Do you guys have organs on display in the factory that, people can come in and try and play, or do you know how to play a pipe organ?
No, I do not know how to play, not well anyway. No, we don't have anything on display in the factory. I only know of one company that really ever did that, or maybe two companies that did that, but we don't. If you come and you want to go see some of our instruments, you pretty much can't turn around in Hartford without hitting in Austin. I can think of probably about 30 of them right here in the city, and several that we're very proud of that we would take you to see.
And where would those be located?
Oh gosh, like I said, there's probably at least 30 of them in the city of Hartford. St. Joseph's Cathedral, Trinity College Chapel, the Episcopal Cathedral downtown, Central. I mean, it goes on, and I could list places for the next half hour for you.
Well, that's great. Well, it's good to see that a company is still so involved after these many years with the community and the area, and that you guys are still really building like custom, beautiful, pieces that organizations and churches and all different places can, really take pride in and, be able to have for a long time. So we thank you guys for being involved, and thank you for taking the time out today to answer some of our questions. And thank you for being a part of this Built America.
Well, we thank you for profiling us. It's been enjoyable.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.